Hey, it's that time again. It's the Chat Zone. I'm your host, Donna Ritchie, and I have a very special guest who is a chiropractor. Matter of fact, she's my chiropractor. Her name is Dr. Kandyce Thomas. Welcome to the Chat Zone.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you here.
I appreciate it.
I am in such awe at the information that you're going to share with our viewers today. Let's go ahead and get started with it. What is chiropractic?
Chiropractic is simply an art philosophy of how we're able to treat the spine for musculoskeletal disorders. And it's basically a preventive measure in order for us to not venture into those conditions that are a lot harder to take care of, besides being able to treat by hand with chiropractic.
Okay, explain how it affects the entire body.
Well, just to kind of get a rundown at first, you have to look at the fact that you have your brain in your skull, and from your brain you're going to have an extension, which is your spinal cord. Now, off of your spinal cord, you're going to have all these nerves, and these nerves go to every organ in your body, whether it's your skin, heart, lungs, you name it, a nerve innervates it. So as your brain is communicating with your body, you're constantly getting signals 100% of the time to tell your body how to function. Well, what happens is when you have a trauma, like a fall, an accident, or even an emotional trauma, you tend to have a misalignment of the spine that will cause there to be a little bit of pressure on those nerves. So it's kind of like when you're watering your garden with the hose and you step on that hose, that water stops coming out.
Yes.
The exact same premise with the spine. If you are in an accident or a trauma or something that causes just a little jar on your spine, it puts that pressure on that nerve. So now whatever the brain is trying to send down that nerve to that organ, it won't get there. So then that is when your body starts working less than 100%. And that is basically how chiropractic works.
Now, you talk about emotional stress and having to, because the first thing I would think about if there's an emotional stress, I wouldn't think of a chiropractor.
Right.
You know, and most people don't think of chiropractic. That's not the first thought that comes to their mind when something happens in the body, whether it's, now if it's a headache, then I can see where you would think of a chiropractor.
Right.
But for emotional, no.
Well, let me give you an example. It's almost like as soon as you get off work, the first thing you think about is, oh my gosh, I have to sit in this hour of traffic to get home. And you automatically get tight and tense in the shoulders and the neck area. And all of a sudden you have a headache and you're like, where did this come from? Well, the headache all came from an emotional thought that you had about having to sit in traffic before you were able to get home for a whole hour. And so that right there was an emotion that you had that caused your body to tighten physiologically. And now with an adjustment, you're able to release that pressure and again allow that headache to begin to dissipate. So there's so many things that you can think of that your body will react to physically where you're able to get an adjustment and have that taken care of.
Well, how often should you see a chiropractor? Or when do you know to see a chiropractor?
Well, it depends. Like some people, just know when their body is a little off, and they just know that, I need a little pressure, a little relief just taken care of off of my spine. For those that have never experienced chiropractic before, it just depends on the condition that they're coming in for. So people come in for neck pain or headaches or back pain, and depending on how serious the injury is, it depends on how often you would be able to see the chiropractor. So I wouldn't really give a specific amount of time because, again, what your body is going to be able to be accustomed to with an adjustment may be different from mine. And so it just depends basically on how your body is going to respond.
Okay, so tell me what really happens when you go see the chiropractor.
Well, initially, most chiropractors will do a consultation, and a consultation is just simply where we're able to find out why are you here to see me.
Okay.
So it's just a history. And then afterwards, an examination is done. And the exam is the physical part where we're able to do certain tests to check the orthopedic findings and the neurological findings so we can see exactly what we need to work on and what's causing your issues. And then after that, some doctors do take x-rays, some don't really warrant them. And then others, after that, will then do an adjustment on the first visit, some maybe on the second. But then again, the adjustment is simply so that we're able to take care of everything that you have addressed during your consultation.
I know a few weeks ago, I was working and I just made a slight turn and I thought, I think I just kind of put my back out of whack or something. And so that's when I called you, and you ironed me out.
Right.
You ironed me out in a chiropractic way.
Right.
But I found that to be so helpful because you just it can be just something simple.
Right, and just like you knew something was wrong, something was out. It's not like you went home and sat down for a couple of hours or a few days and said, okay, something's not right. You knew right then and there because you know what your body's supposed to feel like and how it felt when something was wrong. And that was to answer your question even from earlier. How do people know when to go to a chiropractor? You know when something is not right in your body. Whether you know specifically about what chiropractic does for you, you just know something is wrong. And then hopefully there's that option out there that someone has given you to say, hey, why don't you try chiropractic and see if that will work for you. So yeah, that definitely is always an option.
Well, answer this question for me. There was once I was in a chiropractor's office. It wasn't your office, but it was before I met you. And I saw a lady she had just had a baby on a Thursday, and she brought the baby in on a Monday to get adjusted. And I thought, wow, why is she bringing a very tiny newborn, fragile baby into a chiropractor's office?
Right. Well, first let me tell you the term subluxation. Sub means just below or under, and the luxation part is just simply like a dislocation. So it's like just a slight dislocation. That's basically what we treat, or subluxations. If you think about when a baby is born, the baby is about 5, 6, maybe 8 pounds, but they're being pulled out of that small vaginal canal by someone that's 150, 200, 250, 100 pounds, and they're pulling on that little body. So imagine a little spine that hasn't even become solidified as pure bone yet being pulled on just to come out of that vaginal canal. That is usually with chiropractic considered the very first subluxation of the body. So imagine if as you're pulling that baby out of that small canal, something misaligned, and they go their entire life and never had that fixed. And you're wondering, like, by the time you're 25 or 28, why am I getting migraines? Did I get in a car accident? Am I studying too hard? Certain things that you're trying to think of recently in your life as to why you may be having certain conditions, when it could have been something as simple as what was tweaked the wrong way when I was being pulled out that vaginal canal. And the best example I give of that is my mom. When she was coming out, when she was being born, they noticed her feet were coming out, which is breech position. They actually pushed my mother back in and turned her around. And when they pulled her out with the forceps, it actually destroyed the nerves on the right side of her neck. So my mother's right arm, she has no feeling. She can't really move it the way she should. And again, that's all because of the damage done to her nervous system. So that's how delicate a child is at that age. So it was awesome that she brought her in at such a young age because, again, you want to make sure everything is properly aligned, even after all that pulling and tugging. And even though it was Thursday, you said Monday, I adjusted my first daughter at 1 day old and my second daughter at a week old.
Wow. Well, I hope that you are getting something out of this, and we're going to have more of the Chat Zone when we return, so don't go away.
Thank you for watching the Chat Zone. We'll be right back.
The Affordable Care Act has had over 7 million people sign up for it this year alone. One of the biggest things is that people are saving money for themselves, for their families, and for their future. By doing this, you want to make sure that you understand how the plan works for you. So definitely feel free to give Mondes Thomas a call with AmeriLife and Health Services, and we'll go over all of your various options with you. My phone number is 704-728-5075. If you have any questions, no matter how big or small, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
If you're in the market for an electrical service, then look no further. Almighty Electrical Installations will get the job done. They are licensed, bonded, and insured. With over 18 years of experience, they know how to get the job done fast, affordable, effective, and professionally. They do new construction electrical rewiring, panel change out, bathroom lighting, kitchen lighting, custom home and industrial lighting, upgrades, entertainment center, and much, much more. Almighty Electrical Installations. Turn us on, 704-712-6536. That's 704-712-6536.
Are you tired of being sick? Try our amazing alkaline water. Come visit us at the Water Depot, 3312 Highway 21, Unit 102, Fort Mill, South Carolina 29715, or visit us online at DonnaRitchie.com or unforgettablewater.com. Change your water, change your health. Thank you for tuning in to the Chat Zone.
Dr. Kandyce, before the commercial break, we were talking about, I was telling you about an incident where when I went to a chiropractor, there was a little baby just freshly born at the chiropractor, and I didn't quite understand why would you have a little baby at the chiropractor's office to make an adjustment. And so tell me again, now you said, because we were talking during the commercial break, how you adjust a baby's spine.
Yeah. Well, again, because so many people do get nervous about bringing in a baby so young,
Yes,
as opposed
I was
to
nervous
them.
for the parent.
Right. And the force is completely different. You know, you just have to, as a good chiropractor, you just have to really gauge, the patient, because even with some adults, you have to put less pressure in, and then some people like more pressure. So, of course, for a child, and especially an infant, you definitely want to put way less force or pressure than you would, because actually their spines are not even complete bone and ossified until we're about 10 years old.
Really?
So when we are adjusting, we're still pushing on soft cartilage. So you only need to use a fingertip, maybe two, when you're adjusting an infant that young. And then, of course, as we get older, we need a little bit more pressure because our bones are now set in their places, and we start to do things where our bodies become accustomed to the position that it's in. So we have to kind of fight a little bit more through those tough muscles as we've gotten older. And then if you even look into, as we become into our senior years, the pressure becomes less, because now we're looking at things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, where you can't put as much pressure in because the bones are a little bit more brittle. So it's almost kind of like going back to that infancy type stage.
Well, is there something that we can do to help where our bones don't become so brittle as we age?
Oh, yeah, there's a number of things. Now, there are the factors, of course, of like race or things that we do that will allow, well, actually not allow, but as to why our bodies are predisposed to things like osteoporosis and osteopenia. But then again, there are certain things that we can do to either slow the progression of those type of conditions. So there's those weight-bearing activities, and you probably hear that when you take exercise classes or yoga, where they say walk with small weights in your hand as you're walking out on the sidewalk or at the park or something, because what that weight will do is allow your body's innate abilities to say, okay, well, there's some extra weight on my bones, so your body begins to deposit more calcium in those areas, and so that strengthens the bones. Then, of course, you have things like your diet, like, of course, putting in more calcium, more magnesium, those things that help strengthen the bones. So I know a lot of people are very familiar with calcium coming from dairy, but you also get a lot of calcium from dark leafy vegetables, because, of course, the cows can't get the calcium because unless they're eating the grass, which is that dark leafy vegetable for them. So if we do the same thing, consume those type of vegetables, we're also getting that same amount of calcium. And then, of course, that vitamin D that we get from the sun. So, about 15, 20 minutes daily out in the sun, that also helps to give us that vitamin D to help strengthen our bones as well.
I thought that was very enlightening to find out that just to get the vitamin D, as soon as the sun hits your skin, your body automatically makes vitamin D.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, it's just amazing the innate ability that our body has. I mean, our body knows what it needs in order to continue processing all of the different hormones and vitamins that we will survive off of. And the minute, like you said, we step out into the sun, that's why it's only 15 minutes. It's nothing to go out there and bake yourself to death or, to end up with a skin cancer, but it's just enough for your body to be able to synthesize that vitamin D into something healthy that we can use.
Okay, so you say a basic 15 to 20 minutes?
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes every day is enough to be out in the sun.
What about proper shoes? How important is that?
Oh, that is beyond important, especially when it comes to people with low back issues. And people are like, well, shoes and back, but yes. And the reason why is because you almost have to look at your stance in your body and your spine from the bottom up. And if you have a fallen arch or you have very flat shoes, that tends to cause your ankles to roll in. When your ankles roll inwards, then it will inevitably pull your knees in, so you get that knock-knee kind of feel. And then when your knees are pulled in, then your hips become off-kilter. And when your hips are off-kilter, then, of course, you're going to feel it in your low back. So it all starts with a good support in your feet. So as long as you have a proper shoe, that works wonders for so many people with their backs. And that is one thing I definitely tell people about in my office when they're talking about low back pain. The first thing I look at is their feet and their shoes, because that fallen arch in the feet are one of the biggest problems that causes low back pain.
Okay, so as we are, when babies are first born, then they need to get an adjustment. What about during the toddler years? How important is that?
Oh, definitely, because I mean, as children, we're constantly falling down, falling off of bicycles, off the monkey bars, and again, kids are so resilient, so they don't really feel that pain like we normally would as adults. They just hop right back up after they've fallen and they keep on going. But just as parents, we need to also look at, how severe was that fall, or, how did the mechanism of that fall occur? Because again, if something is just misaligned just slightly, but then that child goes another 5 or so years with that misaligned spine from falling off that monkey bar the wrong way, then what could it cause later on in the future? And so you always have to make sure that your child is properly aligned. And I mean, the same way they tell you to go to the dentist every 6 months to make sure, not saying that your child is chewing on the side of a table, but if it's going to do something that's going to cause their teeth to, begin to rot or fall out, what do? You take them to the dentist just to keep it aligned and make sure that you have that maintenance. The exact same premise with chiropractic. You don't wait until years on the road when you now feel something, because pain is always the last thing to show up. You want to make sure that you keep that child aligned so that as they grow, they're growing properly aligned.
Okay, so now you say when you have customers come into your office, what type customers come into your office?
Oh, we have.
What condition are they in?
Well, one, it comes from, I say, from the cradle to the grave. So every age, just about. I've seen 6 months old has been the youngest that I've seen as far as patients, besides me adjusting my own child at that young age. And then the oldest patient I have is like about 86 or 88 years old. So anyone can come. Now, as far as conditions, of course, the typical neck pain, back pain, headaches. Car accidents for sure, people come in for. And I'm glad you brought up the car accidents, because one of the major things I tell people is that when you're in a car accident, initially you may not even feel the discomfort from that accident because you have so much adrenaline rushing through your body. It kind of overrides your pain receptors, so you don't even feel anything. Now, a day or two after your adrenaline has calmed down, your pain receptors are still kicking in, and you can feel a lot of that discomfort. And that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize, because if a ton car was to hit your car is not the only thing that's going to absorb that a pound. It's going to be your body is taking in a lot of that shock as well. So you will feel that at some point. So again, you want to make sure that you get aligned, because if not, you're going to go years down the road with something misaligned that will cause problems later on. Okay,
that's good information, because I know when I first started going to the chiropractor, I wish I would have known this years ago, but when I started going, I was involved in a car accident. This has been years ago, and I went to the chiropractor, and we're going to talk about that after the commercial break, like pillows, because I know they recommended a certain type of pillow for me. And then we're going to talk about hip replacement, because a lot of people, as they get up in age, they end up getting hip replacement. And I'll tell you of an incident where chiropractic really came in so handy. And a loved one in my life, they actually went to a chiropractor and got relief. Okay, so I hope you have learned something on the chat zone today, and we're going to have more with Dr. Kandyce.
Thank you for watching the chat zone. We'll be right back.
The Affordable Care Act has had over 7 million people sign up for it this year alone. One of the biggest things is that people are saving money for themselves, for their families, and for their future. By doing this, you want to make sure that you understand how the plan works for you. So definitely feel free to give Mondez Thomas a call with AmeriLife and Health Services, and we'll go over all of your various options with you. My phone number is 704-728-5075. If you have any questions, no matter how big or small, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
If you're in the market for an electrical service, then look no further. Almighty Electrical Installations will get the job done. They are licensed, bonded, and insured. With over 18 years of experience, they know how to get the job done fast, affordable, effective, and professionally. They do new construction electrical rewiring, panel change out, bathroom lighting, kitchen lighting, custom home and industrial lighting, upgrades, entertainment center, and much, much more. Almighty Electrical Installations. Turn us on, 704-712-6536. That's 704-712-6536.
Are you tired of being sick? Try our amazing alkaline water. Come visit us at the Water Depot, 3312 Highway 21, Unit 102, Fort Mill, South Carolina 29715, or visit us online at DonnaRitchie.com or unforgettablewater.com. Change your water, change your health. Thank you for tuning in to the Chat Zone.
Dr. Kandyce, I have a real quick question. I heard that once you start chiropractic, that you have to do it for the rest of your life. Is that true?
No, and I think where the misleading statement of like that comes from is the fact that when people begin to go to a chiropractor and they begin to notice how well they feel after being adjusted, then they make the choice if they want to continue. Now, yes, there are some chiropractors that they have something called a wellness program, and it is something that, yes, we may advertise to people at some point because it's a practice and a science that you want your body to be able to stay in that preventative state at all times and not get to those other conditions like cancer or diabetes. You always want to have you in the best health possible. But again, you have people that they feel so well afterwards that they just want to continue. So yeah, they may continue throughout their lifetime. So we never say that you have to come to us for the rest of your life. But I think once you realize what a good adjustment feels like and what your body should feel as opposed to how you felt before getting adjusted, then that's something that you just want to continue.
What are some myths about being at the chiropractor's office? Or chiropractor?
Some myths.
Are there any myths?
One of the biggest is that one right there, is that you got to come all the time for the rest of your life. Again, like if you just feel good and you know what your body's supposed to feel like, that's why you want to continue to come to see a chiropractor.
So would that be every 6 months, every 3 months? I mean, because you're feeling good now. You've already you've already gotten your adjustment. So now what?
No, well, these are just my recommendations, but I mean, with my patients, I say at least once a month. And the reason why is because think about how many things we go through on a daily basis, emotionally, physically. We're lifting grocery bags, children, we exercise, we're in the jobs that are stressful. You know, all these things are occurring that can cause a subluxation and a misalignment on the spine. So we tend to get tense and tight, and we just always want to feel better than those situations that we're in sometimes. And so, I mean, just once a month is good. I mean, once a week would be better.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, because we're always in these positions where our body can be misaligned, I tell people if you're able to get in once a week to maybe once a month, that's awesome.
What about hip replacement? A lot of times as we get up in age, I've known elderly people have to have hip replacement. Namely, my dad had to. The doctors recommended that he have a hip replacement. Well, I know my dad, and that wasn't going to happen. So I told him I recommended a chiropractor, and my dad is 80 years old. He's in perfect health and everything. But when he went to the chiropractor, he actually felt so much better after. He was so glad that he went.
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing is a hip replacement or any other type of surgery like that, a lot of them can be prevented. One of the biggest things I tell people is to always get a second opinion, especially before getting any type of surgery like a hip replacement, because that is such a huge part of your body. I mean, your hips are almost the foundation of the rest of you because you're standing, you're sitting, you know, all that comes within the hip area. And so when you go to a chiropractor, there are so many different techniques that can be used because I know what people tend to do is they try chiropractic and not chiropractors. Like when you go to a dentist or any other type of doctor, if you don't like them, you'll find another doctor, but in that same profession. And people tend to want to just get away from chiropractic altogether. But if there's a technique that was given to you or done to you that you didn't like, just try another chiropractor because there may be something different. And that's probably what happened with your dad, is that he just happened to have a good chiropractor that knew a great technique to help get that hip to release. Because a lot of times a hip replacement will come because there's so much tension and so much taut muscles in that area that it gives you so much pain every time you step or every time you sit down.
Yeah, it was his sciatic nerve. Right. And it was to the point where he couldn't walk from one room to the next.
Exactly. But again, the different techniques that we can use, the different instruments that we have, we can adjust by hand, we can adjust by instrument. So there's so many different ways that can be relieved. And again, when you're of that age, when you're around 80, you're going 80 years working that joint. The muscles are tight, the ligaments are tight, the tendons are taut.
But I would think, too, that being at that age as well, that there's a thinning in the muscle tissue.
Right, but look at it this way. Was it both of his hips or just the one?
I think it was just the one.
But aren't both hips 80 years old?
Yes.
So that's why I tell people all the time. It's like they want to blame a lot of things on age.
Yes.
But the other hip is 80 years old too. So why isn't that one doing the same thing? Okay. So that means something is just wrong, misaligned over there. Something's a little too tight or something just isn't right in that joint. just go in there and find out what it is and fix it. And that's why I tell people it's nothing to do with age. I mean, there are people that are 90, close to 100, and still walking around, going to the grocery store, driving just fine. And these have some people that are 16, 20 years old, and they feel like their life is about to fall apart because their body hurts so much. So it just depends on how you treat your body, whether you drink enough water, if you're eating the right foods, if you're stretching. And stretching is very, very key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even when you're 80.
Oh yeah, even when you're 80.
Okay. What about those people who have had hip replacement?
Now that's the thing. Once you've had a hip replacement or any type of surgery, realize that your body has been cut on. So once your body has been cut, it's going to create scar tissue, and in that area, it's going to become a little bit more sensitive and a little bit weaker than it normally was before you were cut. So now your body has to become accustomed to moving around with all this scar tissue and it being a weaker area. So those are things that people have to now realize. I have to start stretching more because it's going to be a little bit more taut. Muscles are going to be a little bit tighter because when you go in there and cut, you tighten things up, you shorten muscles. So now it's all about stretching them, relaxing them, elongating those muscles so that now that body part can work just like the other body part. So again, the surgeries, I never knock anything because everything has its place, because there are a lot of things that chiropractic cannot take care of. But of course, if you ever get to that point, just realize that after that surgery, you want to do everything you can to make sure your body doesn't become too sedentary, because as my granddad said, it would stove up on you, get very stiff. So you want to make sure you relax those body parts and you stretch them out very, very well, so you can get at least close enough to how you were before that surgery.
Okay, that's some good information. I noticed too, real quick, when you were adjusting me, that you adjusted even my leg, the length of my legs. How important is that?
Right. Well, what it is when chiropractors are looking at the length of the leg, we see that one side might be a little bit shorter than the other.
Why is that?
Well, because the muscles and the nerves in those legs, they all again go up from the brain and the spinal cord. So whenever you have some type of physiological shift or physical shift or trauma, it causes those muscles to tighten, and it can sometimes draw a leg a little bit shorter, or it can sometimes cause one of those bones to tilt a little bit, and for that reason it'll pull that leg shorter. So it's all connected, from head to toe, fingertip to fingertip. So when one area of the body is affected, it can now do the same for another part of the body and just draw it a little tighter. So that's what we're looking at when we're assessing. And again, because there's different techniques that we use that engage those leg lengths or whatever, we just wanted to find out whether or not we can get it back balanced with those techniques.
Well, I want to thank you for being a part of the chat zone. You have enlightened me, and I know you have enlightened our viewers. I hope that you have taken some notes. Get her website information, write it down, and go see Dr. Kandyce. She's a great chiropractor, and she's a little lady, but she is very strong, and she can get you adjusted and back in shape. So on behalf of the Chat Zone and myself, the host, Donna Ritchie, we want to say have a great day.
Thank you for watching the Chat Zone.